Hello again, everyone. Hopefully, actually, I should double check on my sound. Yes, we're doing fine. We're gonna, after we just did our brief intermission, we're gonna go back to, we're gonna look at the syllabus. So we've motivated why we're doing. Okay, we're not doing that. Okay, we're gonna have to jump ahead. Okay, there's our intermission. Sorry about that. It's amazing after doing this for God knows 2 months or whatever it was this past winter term. I still can't. It's still not that streamlined doing one of these things. I'm better in person. There's a sort of an energy about it. Um, so we're going to be talking about the boring stuff. The boring stuff because I don't want people, 3 months from now saying, "Oh, but you didn't tell us this." You're expected to read over the syllabus to make sure you know what your expectations are. But even then, why not go over it now? It's a faster way of digesting things that I can sort of emphasize what is important here and why we're doing what we're doing. Uh, so I want to be very, very clear about what the expectation is so that people don't say, well, I didn't know I had to study. I just thought I could memorize the textbook for the exam. No, it doesn't work. So hopefully these numbers are right. Okay, so we have 30% for assignments. What? Okay, and the assignments are weekly. We'll go over to the details of that in a second. The assignments are only there to get you to the exams and then the final exam. But if you look at that, that's 55% of your grade in exams. And that may not be much compared to some of your other courses, but it's more than enough to make me a little nervous about that, right? If you have one bad exam, it shouldn't screw up your life, but those exams are fairly beefy. The assignments are there so you don't screw up your life. The assignments are there for if you do the assignments and you can handle them, the exam should not be a problem at all. It shouldn't even be close to being a problem. Uh, and then we have in-class quizzes and the labs, which are worth points as well. All of this is just getting you the practice so that you can do the final exam, and it's sort of a forcing function here. Um, we're going to be doing Tony Gaddis's 2017 is the newest edition, C++ from control structures through objects. It is not the ideal textbook, but it is a pretty good textbook. It's not overly dry like a lot of C++ textbooks are. But I will say that it's very C++. So you'll see a lot of cout statements and things like that, cn's, statements and functions and things in C++ that we're not even going to touch. We're going to be using almost pure C the entire term here. And then we're going to reuse that textbook again in 2400 when we learn C++. That's the reason we use that textbook. It covers both classes, so you only need to buy one textbook. Uh, it's a good, solid textbook, but it does sort of muddy the waters by using C++ terms. And I don't want to use those terms because what the heck is an object? Well, you'll have to wait till 2400 to figure out what that is, right? That I didn't want to do that. But there's other options. So how to see how to program. So C programming language. That's actually one of the creators of C is one of the authors of that book. It's quite a interesting book. C++ programming language. But on top of that, because I'm sure many of you probably do not want to buy 5 different textbooks, there's only one that's only starting out with C++ is the only one that's the real textbook of the course. Uh, but even if you don't read textbooks, there is a slew of resources. I cannot teach everything about C and C++ in these lectures. It's way too boring, and quite frankly, it's not going to stick in anyone's head. I'm aiming to teach high-level concepts, and the exact syntax on how to do something comes up in an assignment. And if I didn't cover it in the lecture, look it up online. Right? The exams themselves are going to be. I cannot stop you from doing a Google search for how to call a printf function, right? That is memorization anyways, right? I don't look for that. I'm looking for how you think and break down a big problem. And therefore, these are great resources, but those are the syntax is like in a spoken language, the syntax is just the words. The sentiment, the ideas being conveyed by those words, that's what we're really aiming at. That's the semantics, the meanings of our programs. And that you can't learn from a website. This will teach you the syntax, and they're great resources. I'm trying to teach you the foundational concepts that we're playing with. Uh, Assignments themselves are designed to be that application. So you learn, listen in class, you hopefully process some of this, you may do a little practice with a quiz, and then you apply it in the lab, and then you apply it again in the assignments. They are necessary but not sufficient condition for learning. All right, so doing that practice, some people call it being in the salt mines. Right, you need to do that practice in order to internalize it. We are looking for memorize. We're not looking for memorization. We're looking for understanding, and so memorization is not going to help you one bit. It would be I people always get confused by this, and I go, well, what musical instrument do you play? And they go, oh, piano or cello or oboe, or I don't play any musical instrument, but I play football, or whatever the case is. You name any sport, any musical instrument, almost anything that you do in this world, except for it seems computer science for a lot of people for some reason. Right? You almost choose anything that you get that you are really good at. Let's say you're really good at basketball. No one gets good at basketball by watching the NBA. You might learn a move or something like that, but you don't get good at basketball unless you're on the court, practicing, shooting hoops, playing a game, whatever the case is. You don't get good at piano by not practicing. You don't watch someone play the piano and get good at playing the piano. You have to do it. Your body has to have a body memory, muscle memory for it. That's for physical things, but it's also for mental things. You don't get good at writing until you write a bunch. And you don't get good at programming until you program a bunch. There is no substitute. There is no shortcut. There is no corner. There's corner to cut. It is practice. That is the secret technique to programming. And that's what the assignments are for. Okay, so if you cheat off your friends and grab their assignments, I will also say, I think it's probably the next slide. We check for cheating programmatically because why not? And it's easy to do. Uh, if you cheat off your, and let's say you magically get by without us catching you, I don't think that I should be I mean, I wouldn't congratulate you, but it is a ridiculous notion that if you think you got away with it. Because fact of the matter is, you just screwed yourself over. By you not doing the work means you can't pass the final exam, and if you can't pass the final exam, you don't pass the course, or even if you pass the course, then you're screwed over in 2400. And I've seen more than enough students do that. They do a divide and conquer. One person does one assignment, one person does the other assignment. Then they go, but I worked so hard. No, you didn't work so hard on the course. Right? This it requires practice. Um, Students shouldn't cheat, but they do. Assignments are just to get you through the exam, to make sure you're comfortable with it. It is shooting hoops. It is not the game, it is the practice for the game. Uh, and so, quiz zero, by the way, we have for assignment one, we have a quiz zero. Quiz zero is a syllabus quiz. It's on See Learn. At least I should be when I've posted this video. That quiz is for you to make sure that you understand the syllabus, and then you can do assignment one. So until you do quiz zero and pass it, you can't even see assignment one. All right, we have 10 to 11 assignments. Yes, that many assignments. It's about one a week, and you have 2 weeks to dispute any given grade. So you give you back a grade whenever you get your grade back. Maybe it's a week later, right? Then you have 2 weeks from the time you get your grade back to protest it, right? You should have feedback. You should know exactly what the TA is saying, why you lost points, and if you don't know why the TA took off points for you, the TA should tell you why they didn't. And if they stonewall you, you come talk to me. I will figuratively smack them upside the head. There is absolutely no excuse for why you should not learn from mistakes, and you should be very clear why you lost points and how to correct things. That's the point. The assignments are practice, and you don't get better unless you figure out what you did wrong during practice. All right, so 1 week per assignment, and we are absolutely draconian. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Absolutely draconian with the assignments. If you miss an assignment, if you're a minute late submitting it, you get zero on it. The reason you get a zero on it is because we're dropping at least one assignment. That's the only fair way to make sure that everyone's treated equally. It's not the person that's best able to schmooze or to be able to beg or or cry or whatever the case is. It's everybody gets a freebie just in case you screw up. Don't screw up twice. And if everyone gets a freebie, then it's the only way to be truly fair. And if you screw up your very first assignment, well, now you screwed yourself up nicely, right? You don't have any safety net. So make sure you're doing your assignments. And at the end of term, if you want to not do the last assignment, fine. Although, why not do the last assignment? It's the practice you need for the exam. They're distributed throughout all this time, and it's meant to be these little short, semi-short things to get you practicing all the time. So every week, on the day you pass in one assignment, you get another one. Uh, Except for in a really extreme cases, as in I'm missing a limb from a car accident last night, kind of thing. Like extreme cases, you get a zero. If you're a minute late, even if I was only a minute late, no, don't care. It's the only way to make it fair. And I have to be that much of a jerk, and I feel terrible, and I do it anyways. I, you went through a breakup, doesn't matter. Just take the zero. That's fine because it's not actually a zero. That's why we have that. That buffer is if you get sick, you have the safety. That's what it's there for. Use it. If you're panicked or you're freaked out, you have too many assignments, don't do that week. That's fine. With 10 assignments at what is it, 30%? Something small. 30%, right? That who cares? If we're counting 10 assignments, you lose 3%. If at worst case scenario, you lose 3% by not doing the assignment, not doing it at all. 3%, right? You're going to lose a lot more on the final exam if you didn't do the work. So just plug away at it. All right. Uh, so submit early, submit often. You should always be able to submit multiple times, so there's no excuse for, oh well, I was only the last minute. No, if you submit it the day beforehand, that's fine. You want to change it again? Submit it again. We'll just grade the last one you submit. And if you're done a day in advance, who cares? Great, do your next class. It's the easiest thing to do, and yet people don't do it. We're using Visual Studio 2019 for after assignment one, so all of our programming assignments are using the default standard is going to be using Visual Studio 2019. As in, the TAs will have Visual Studio up and running. They will test your code on that. If it doesn't work on Visual Studio 2019, that's your fault. So if you're using a Mac, for example, which is not supported on Visual Studio 2019, you need either a virtual machine or you need to figure out something. And this is unfortunately, if it can't be and if the code can't be opened, compiled, whatever the case is, you also get a zero. It is not meant to be a jerk move. It's meant to be so that people don't pass you it's not the TA's job. If you pass in half cobbled together garbage that makes no sense whatsoever, and them trying to figure out ways to give you points, right? It's your job to prove how right you are. So do half the assignment, pass in half. That's fine. You don't have to do all of it. Pass in half, you'll get all the points. You don't pass in something that's broken because then we can't test things. Um, if there's a really extreme exception, you get a 2-week delay at following the normal deadline, so just in case. Each one of those assignments has a reflection at the end. This is not meant to be tear inducing or anything like that. It's not meant to be ridiculously large. It is meant for me to figure out what you understand about the class, what you don't understand about the class, what you liked about the assignment, that sort of thing. It is the reflection on what you've learned or how much you've learned. It's not right or wrong. It is I hate Visual Studio. It's a piece of garbage. Great. That's a great reflection, right? This is a great assignment. I loved it and I learned a lot. Great reflection as well, right? You can do more than that, but it's not meant to be something that you're marked right or wrong. It is so we will not grade your assignments until you pass in a reflection. We will not grade it at all. And then afterwards, when you pass in you should pass in your reflection at the same time as your assignment. And when you do, we make sure that you pass in your reflection, and then we'll grade the assignment. And then the TAs pass feedback back to me so I can figure out how to improve the class for you guys, or what you were confused by, or if there was any points of contention. Right? That's what the reflection's for. For our standpoint, the reflection for you guys is for you to make sense of what you've learned. Does the light bulb come on? Is there something that's still confusing you? Um, it's to make sense of your general experience. And just learning by doing is not enough. So, just in general, other than saying I cheated and here's how I cheated, your reflections will not cost you points. They will not, unless they're like me, no reflection, right? If they're even the least, if they're a legitimate attempt at reflecting on how you did and how you felt about the assignments, that particular assignment, it's fine. You can call me a jerk all you want. That's fine. It's perfectly legitimate. Just I want your honest reflection. Okay, what was the task? How did you feel about it? How did you or do you feel about it now? Or at the beginning, how did you feel about it? How could you make things better? Did you learn that comments and documentation is useful, for example? Did you learn how to test your code? Whatever the case is, whatever works for you. It's your takeaway. Um, so, I already mentioned briefly already that you're adults. We expect you to adhere to a professional conduct. I know maybe in high school, I don't know, maybe you could have been able to cheat, but this is university. And quite frankly, it really pisses me off when people cheat. There's really your integrity is the only thing you have as currency. If you do not, if you're programming something and they found out you stole code from other people wholesale, or if you don't actually know how to code at all and you're faking it, your reputation is ruined, right? And your reputation is the only thing you carry with you. And so, quite frankly, you're supposed to. I should appeal to your sense of honor and dignity and stuff like that, and say, you're adults, you shouldn't be cheating. Uh, Unfortunately, people do anyways. And then the other term is I will smack you with a stick, essentially. Plagiarism includes, copying other people's work, getting code from other people without giving permission. If it's like, how do you use this function call? Fine. Put a comment. Say where you got that function call, syntax from. It's not going to be the assignment. You can't copy the assignment. So if it's just like a couple lines, tell me where you got it from. That's fine. That's giving reference. Providing answers to other students. If you give answers to other people, you are just as involved. It is not sort of involved. It's not kind of involved. It is you are just as guilty if you give the answer to somebody else as them cheating. And ultimately, a lot of times when I've seen this, somebody will give their answer to somebody else. The other person doesn't change a damn thing, tells them that they're going to change something, and nothing gets changed. And I catch them red handed and they go, "What the hell, man? Like, you were supposed to have changed the answers," and the person was just not good enough to be able to change the answers. Computers make copying really easy. And you go, "Well, I can just do a find and replace." Computers also make detecting cheating extremely easy. There's something called MOS. We use it all the time. It's checking to see how easy it is to go from one file to another, and it does every single combination of every single submitted file from all students for that assignment. So if you and Bob both cheated off each other, but you changed the various the name of your variables from A to B, both very bad variable names by the way, but if you change the name of your variables, we catch it. Moss says it took me one step to change all those variable names. They're cheating. It doesn't actually tell me it's cheating. It says this is flagged for potential plagiarism. And then I look at it and I report it. And I don't talk to you first. I report it straight to the associate dean. And every term I do this to last 1400 last fall I did it for well over 20 if not 30 different students. It was a bloodbath. I got them all kicked out. And I have no qualms with doing that. It was a lot better last term. Do not make the extra work for me. I get really crotchety. So, we check. Don't bother. There's no point cheating. Take the three. If you don't know what's going on or if you don't have time for the assignment, take the 3% off. Who cares? It won't even take 3% off if you still have your mulligan, if you still have your freebie assignment. It is better to get zero on an assignment than to cheat every single time. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is better to just fail an assignment and learn from that, or just not worry about having to pass in that one assignment than to cheat. It is the worst thing it's the stupidest thing you can do because it drops you a letter grade. On top of that, you went from a C to a C minus or a C to a D or something like that for the little tiny 3% assignment instead of doing instead of taking the 3% off on the assignment. Um, by the way, find and replace is not equal to new code. Uh, and yeah, last fall I should have said I didn't update that one thing. Um, if you're going to look at other people's stuff, tell me where you got something from, right? Citations, if you're talking about other people's work, you can say where you get little snippets from, right? Um, you can talk to other students about your code. You cannot share bits as a general rule. So you talk in English, great. You doodle something up on a whiteboard, fine. You tell them exactly how to write the code, no, 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 right? Even if you verbally, verbatim tell someone how to write the code, hey, first of all, it would not look as bad as some of the cheating cases I have. But if you share code at all, if you passing files around, it is cheating. Never show your code to another person. And you don't let people look at your code either. External libraries should normally be checked with me first. Uh, so even small cheating is cheating. Now, I normally have, I miss doing this for a full class of people. Anyone know who this group is? I love pointing this out. It's just a weird quirk of history. I'll leave you for a second. Who is this group? Well, yes, it is. It's Men at Work, the Australian band from the 1980s who sang Land Down Under. Yes, I knew you would all know that. Um, I like pointing this out because, yes, they were a band with a flautist in their regular band repertoire. Yes, they had a flautist. It was late 70s, early 80s kind of thing. Uh, it turns out in their biggest hit that got them all their money, they have this one little snippet line. It's a little riff on the Kookaburra breast in the old gum tree or some crazy Australian song like that. That the flautist just put in there just as a cool little riff. It's a traditional folk song. He thought, let's show that as part of the riff, right? It's like throwing Izabai in there if you're a Newfoundlander, right? Just fun little traditional thing. Except that particular song was actually written in the 1930s, and the woman who wrote it actually copyrighted it for the Girl Guides of Australia, and that would have been fine and dandy, except one rather big jerk in this world went around buying up copyrights, like copyrighted music or music that was not in the public domain, buying it up for popular songs, and then just suing the pants off of everyone, including Men at Work, for the less than 10-second snippet of that particular song. They lost, I think it was 40% of the revenue they made from Land Down Under. The flautist eventually committed suicide as a result. The point being, rather than just to bum you out, the point being here, even small cheating can make a difference. And this was unintentional cheating. Intentional cheating, even small amounts, is something to be taken seriously. So please, for the love of all that's holy, don't piss me off. And speaking of which, yes, these slides, many of the slides, the foundation of these slides, come from other instructors. Audrey, Ali, and Chris all taught this course, and I took snippets from all of their slides with their permission. Any mistakes are on mine. Yeah, that's just because that Audrey doesn't make mistakes at all. It seems that she's like a weird machine that able to just make perfectly immaculate code and comments and documentation. It's really, I'm jealous. Anyways, but yes, any mistakes, spelling mistakes are normally mine. Okay, so we already have a textbook that I already went over. It covers a lot of core exercise, and the textbook if you want more practice, because I know you have lots and lots and lots of free time. There's extra exercises in the textbook. You will be just installing Visual Studio 2019. It is free. Dreamspark.carleton.ca. Just go there, log in with, I think it has to be your uh, BIT credentials. So your CNET email address would be what you're using. Not You have normally two email addresses. One is carleton.ca, the other one cnet at carleton.ca. Right. CNET. Anyways, it's your engineering Carleton email address would be what you're using there. Because it's only free to people in STEM programs, and you're in a STEM program. You get Visual Studio, Windows, and a slew of other programs absolutely free. Get Visual Studio 2019 Community. If you get Enterprise, it won't warn you about this, and it will cut out in about 2 months or 3 months time. I had it happen to me. The professor, I didn't have access to Enterprise for more than 2 to 3 months. So get Visual Studio Community. If you have a Mac, sorry, the official policy, and I checked on it last fall, the official policy on the department is everyone needs a Windows machine or a virtual machine. So half the professors here have a Mac and use a virtual machine for Visual Studio and other things. So it is not just you guys that have to, sort of uh, are constrained by this particular limitation, but we have to have some set of standards that everyone's based off of. So we're testing your code using Visual Studio 2019 on a Windows machine, or the TAs are using a virtual box themselves. But that's how we're testing your code, rather than, oh well, if you're using code, you're using this thing. If you're using blocks, well, it works on this, right? We have one target compiler that we're using, so you might as well get it. You're going to need it for your other classes anyways. Just get in the habit and get it. Later on, when you do 2400, you will need it for MFC stuff, so it will be used, even if we don't use it this term. We have quizzes that are coming up. Um, the quizzes themselves, I'm going to make sure I have a poll everywhere quiz ready for you guys. I am going to register you. It will be your carlton.ca email address in this particular case. The reason I have to keep your carlton.ca, not CNET, not or any other email address, is your carlton.ca email address. The reason I have to point this out is people have problems with the quizzes again and again and again. You have two email addresses. Most people don't know that because it goes to one email. It goes to one reader. Two different email addresses going to just your inbox, but you have two email addresses. One of them is just at carlton.ca, nothing else in front of it. At carlton.ca, your name at carlton.ca, and that email address is what we're going to be using because it's the only email address I have coming from CU Learn. I don't have your other email addresses, so I cannot register you with your other email addresses. I can only use your at carlton.ca email address. When you're doing your quizzes, I have to leave them open, but don't talk to other people and find out the answer. There's no point. The quizzes are worth almost nothing. They're 5%. And more importantly, if you participate at all, you get 50%. Just you put in any answer whatsoever, you will get 50% right off the top. If you get the right answer, you'll get 100%. And we'll have a whole bunch of quizzes, and they're worth effectively nothing. But they get you thinking about the topic, which is why we do them. And you're doing this to try and solidify knowledge, and if you get it wrong, you should go, oh, I got it wrong. Oh crap, and then you can figure out what the answer is, and then you can figure out what's wrong with your mental model of the topic. It's supposed to activate active learning. We're trying it out for the very first time in an asynchronous class setting. I normally do it live in front of students. If this does not work, we'll have to figure something else out. Normally, it's also to wake people up, but that's a different thing. Uh, and ideally, half the time, in class at least, I would, if everyone got it wrong or most people got it wrong, heck, even if 20, 30% got it wrong, I would actually leave the poll open, get you to talk amongst yourselves, and get people to get like 90% of the class getting it right. The reason is you teaching another person teaches you. You learning from another person helps you. Everything, that active discussion and the debate of what is right about the question or what's right, what's the right answer, gets you solidifying your knowledge. All right, so normally I'd have a poll over quiz here. I'm going to be posting one very soon. Poll number one, it is worth, I think it's going to actually be worth 0 points. It is just a test of the system, whether whether it works or not. So it's not going to even be worth anything. It involves who's my favorite director, I think. It really doesn't matter. It's more for, is your system set up correctly? And if it's not, you need to talk to me. We'll have a Piazza post that people can fire off what's wrong with their system, and then we can fix things for you. Uh, so we are also using Piazza, by the way, which is a website which is essentially just a series, a message board, essentially. The reason I use that instead of CU Learn is that it's a lot easier to access. It's a lot easier for me to get it on my phone. It's a lot easier for people to answer. It's a lot easier to. It is a better designed than See You Learn. See You Learn is a cobbled together piece of garbage for that sort of thing. I wanted something a bit more streamlined. And it's a dedicated system for being able to answer things. And it's fully sanctioned by the university. Um, so, by the way, yes, and I'm against losing points for trying first time. So when it comes to the quizzes, by the way, I can't track people asking Piazza questions or anything like that. So the quizzes are used for participation, and I just want you guys trying. Trying and failing, that's fantastic. That's where you learn the best. Being always right doesn't teach you stuff. Failure teaches amazingly well. Okay, so normally I'd say, hey, no electronics or try to limit the electronics, right? If you're doing something else in the back of the class, if you're trying to program your assignment, don't waste your time, don't show up. Stop bothering me, right? Not stop bothering me, but it's there's no point showing up. You cannot multitask. Pay attention in class, right? That's the only way to keep this in your head. Uh, please focus. Don't be like me. I'm easily distracted. You're trying to be focusing on what the topic is, and we are going to go through a lot more interesting stuff than the syllabus. This is the boring one. This is the most boring, in my books at least, most boring presentation. The other ones are, I think, are a lot more exciting. Uh, I'll try not to waste your time any more than the syllabus is a waste of your time. But you pay a lot of money essentially to being here, and it is the should be the fastest way to get information. We'll go over things, and it hopefully will be a lot more streamlined than you trying to read pages upon pages upon pages of a textbook. At least I know I can't focus that long on a textbook. Uh, just for future reference, by the way, if you were doing anything other than attending class and actually paying attention and doing stuff that's relevant to the class, if you're watching a soccer game in class, which last term I had students do, you actually are hurting every other person around you. Anyone that can see that game is out. They actually did the research on that too. There's like a blast radius of like lower GPA based on one person in the middle. Just because the motion is pre-attentive, it will distract you. Even if you don't think it's distracting you, you're actively using cognitive effort to not look at that screen. So, the mantra: be as lazy as possible. Be efficiently lazy. That's my normal mantra for everything with programming. And notice the mantra is not be lazy like this, right? It is be efficiently lazy. The reason I want to say all three words is I don't want people to not understand what I mean by be lazy with just a letter B, right? It's efficient to the point of people may not understand what I'm trying to get across. Uh, I'm not saying anything about efficiency. It's actually not conveying the message correctly. Be efficiently lazy tells you if you can do something, if it takes you a little bit more time, but it saves you in the long run, that's the way you want to go, right? The efficiently lazy way of doing things is pay attention to the lecture, do less work later. I think that's a really good match. If you could save yourself hours of studying and extra work by just paying attention now, and then hours of work not just struggling with the assignment because you weren't paying attention in class and now you don't know what the hell I'm talking about here. It's far better to pay attention now, spend the hour on a lecture, than it is to spend 4 hours cursing at a debugger, right? Efficiently lazy. Pay attention, right? The exams are going to be taking place during the class time. Obviously, not in a class. We'll be doing it on CU Learn in this particular case. They're still to be designed. Uh, the final exam, same thing. It's on CU Learn. CU Learn does make it somewhat possible to cheat, right? Because I cannot monitor you directly. Except I actually run all your code through Moss again, just like I did for your assignments. And on top of that, we can have randomized questions and all sorts of fun stuff like that. All the tricks and tactics I'm going to be using to prevent cheating are going to be to punish the person that is giving the information, not the person cheating. So if you're helping your friend, you're screwing yourself over. That is your warning. If you help your friend, you screw yourself over. So be out, look out for yourself, and the friend that didn't do any work, let him sink, because that's ultimately I want you not to be helping your friend cheat. They should have done the work. Okay. Normally allow a cheat sheet. I still suggest a cheat sheet for these exams just because otherwise you have to look up in a book or something like that. Writing all the information down in a purified, really streamlined form can be a lot more efficient for doing the exam, and it helps you study. Um, So here's my email address. I will say, uh, don't bother emailing me about something that everyone in the class should know or should know about. So if you say, I don't get question two in an email, no, put it on Piazza. If it's a question that you could look up and everyone should be aware of, I expect a Piazza post instead. The reason, because I cannot answer that question 40 times. That same question, especially if that same question there's another 20 people that didn't ask me that question and are just suffering in silence. If you post it on Piazza, you help everyone else out and you get your answer, and other students can also ask you the question, answer the question. It is vastly superior. So email me, fine, but it should be personal email. I don't have this, or I'm having struggling with about a depression, and I'm having to take a medical leave, or whatever the case is. Right? It's something that is personal. You don't want to be posting to everybody. Yeah, email me. That's fine. But if the rest of the class should know, I expect a Piazza post. Oh, I've got to fix this. It's not winter 2020. It's going to be fall 2020. I will post this Piazza thing very, very shortly. Um, you can have Piazza auto email you all the emails and all the comments and all the things that you get from this class. It is not that much. You are responsible for reading other people's stuff or reading the material, right? People should not be posting junk or anything like that, and I can monitor that, and I know everyone who's posting things. I also need to update my office hours because there is no office hours. I didn't fix this slide, uh, but I will not work 24/7. Just letting you know. So normally I have two little kids around, and they can chew up a lot of my free time. And so if you have to wait a couple hours because I'm making supper and putting kids to bed, yes, you may have to wait a couple hours. I can't be able to answer your question immediately. I'm one person. More importantly, if you ask me how to do the assignment at 11 o'clock and it's due at 12 o'clock, uh, yeah, you're not even getting a response from me, right? That is, you're not the expectation is you are working in advance and you cannot email me in a panic about the assignment 5 minutes before the assignment is due, right? You are expected as university students to work in advance. And I'm not going to be waiting up until 12 o'clock if I'm not still already awake. But if I'm not going to be necessarily waiting up for you guys to ask me questions up until the deadline of an assignment. When you write emails, I'm not a stickler about this, but come on, please put the name of the course when you ask. I get people asking me, "Hi, what's the weight of the assignments, or when's the exam?" Hi, when's the exam? I teach 3 classes a term, sometimes with multiple different sections. I don't know what class you're talking about. If I have 300 students, I may not know you by name. I hope to remember many of you by name, but I may not know all of you by name. I remember faces wonderfully, but this is all remotely, so I'm probably going to be really terrible with names and faces this term. Please put your name, properly greet someone. By the way, just I'm not a stickler for it, but every one of your instructors at Carleton would be doctor, not Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or whatever the case is. They all have a PhD. They're all doctor, or professor if you want, right? But call me David if you want. That's fine. But uh, the Mister thing just shows you don't know what university is, right? But just write an email and give me the details. You want to make it as efficient for me to read, so I can give you it as efficient of an answer as possible. So make it easier on yourself and me. Write a proper. If you're going to write something, give the details. All right. The grades go from an A plus to a D minus. That would all be passing grades. F's are failing grades, obviously, and that's under 50%, I do believe. We have this probably going to have this weird quirk of satisfiable versus satisfactory versus unsatisfactory, like we did last term. As in, if you get below a 50, you can say, I don't want an F on my transcript. I want an unsatisfactory. And if you get a D, let's say a D, you can have on your transcript saying satisfactory instead of a D. That was them being very, very generous last term. They might be that generous again this term. The usual grade bucketing is in place, so I think an A plus goes down to 93. An A goes down to 85. I always have to look it up myself. It should also be listed in the syllabus. But where the buckets land, we can be a little bit generous on that thing. We won't grade or bell curve just to give everyone A's or anything like that. But, my exam might be harder one year term than another. And so we would expect a normal distribution around the B range, C, the B range, something like that. And if we have that kind of distribution, but it's a bit lower one term, we might, the bucket for where an A minus is might shift a tiny bit. But don't expect just bell curve, blind bell curving. We do it as fair as possible so that it's compensating for something I screw up with, not whether you did, not everyone's just going to get an A, and not everyone, it's not a curve per se. Okay. Um, so you learn is your go-to center for all of the course information. Um, so I plan to post final exam grades, but after the final grades are in, dropped assignments, you can check your grades, you can check your feedback on your assignments. The generated average for you see you learn though will be wrong because we're dropping a certain number of assignments and a certain number of quizzes. That's not see you learn can't do that sort of thing. So it might say, hey, you have an 80%. Don't believe it. You have to calculate it yourself, right? Because it's going to weight all your exams and all your assignments and everything equally, whether it's a quiz or a midterm. So just letting you know, the labs and the tutorials. You're expected to do the labs. You're expected to submit the labs. Your lab grade will not be based off of how great you did on the lab. It is just submit what you did. You need to do a certain amount. There is going to be checked by TAs, but it's not going to be like, oh, your comments are not that good. It's not an assignment. The labs are for you to get dirty, get your hands dirty, fail, screw up, not, do struggle with certain things and learn from mistakes. That's what the labs are for. They're there for you to ask us questions, for us to answer your questions, for you to really, yeah, to get involved. Um, and the labs are now required, and it's essentially more dedicated time. And with a TA around, it's like going to the gym and having a trainer, right? Whenever I go to the gym, I don't go to the gym anymore because I don't have a trainer anymore. I had a coach when I was competitively swimming, and I swam, I think it's 4 to 5 hours a day. Like it was a ridiculous amount of swimming when I was in high school. There's no way in hell I would be motivated to do that much exercise nowadays. I don't think my heart could handle it, but there's no way I would be trying that much exercise. A personal trainer or a coach can really push you. That's what the labs are for. The TA is supposed to push you to make it as a forcing function to get you to do that practice you need. And there is a lab audit, so you're going to be submitting your lab work for we'll grade. We'll look at your lab work. We can't look at every single submitted lab piece of lab work. So the TAs are going to take a random sampling of those of the submitted work and look at those. And if you submitted something that is actually not a legitimate attempt at the lab work, let's say you submit a blank file or you submit, you know, garbage or a random file, whatever the case is. If we find you doing that on your random spot check of your work, we will then go back and check all your previous work to see if you submit anything of value. So if you get caught not doing the lab work, it'll trigger a full audit, like your taxes trigger a full audit if you cheat on one year of your taxes, right? You'll get a full audit, and then we can figure out if you were doing any work throughout the term. So try your best, submit your work. That should be good enough. But if you try and eke your way around the system, you could lose 10% of your grade because that's how much the labs are worth. Okay, the teaching systems are normally for understanding lectures. We'll hopefully have them do office hours throughout this term. Helping, they're not there to help you just. They're not here to give you answers. They can help you understand concepts. They mark the assignments. They provide feedback. They're supposed to give you clear feedback that you can work with. So if they don't do that, you need to talk to me so I can discipline them. But you do not know who your TA is at any given time, the person that's going to be grading you. Meaning, you need to be extra clear when you're writing your assignments or writing your exams because you do not know who your grader is. You cannot assume that they understand what you're talking about from some previous discussion. So, I like it as a philosophy. It works for all your other classes. Your job is not to be correct. Your job is to prove or to clearly communicate that you are correct. It's not just being correct, it's communicating that you're correct. That is your job as a university student. That applies to every single discipline, every single degree program. A mathematician is not right unless their math is clearly understandably right. If other people don't understand it, that's the mathematician's problem. It's not the reviewers. The reviewers should understand what you're trying to get across. So, if they have an easier time grading your assignments, you get a happier TA. Happier TAs grade more generously. So, effectively, there's a side effect, which is the amount of time it takes your TA to grade your work, the more points you lose. And therefore, you're trying to make it as obviously correct and easy to understand, like putting comments in your code, giving good variable names, that sort of thing, to maximize your chances to get points on assignments, on exams. Uh, we also have a number of rules and regulations for the undergraduate calendar. They are listed here. And Carleton has specific policies on accommodation. I would like to point out, I want to strongly suggest, if anybody has any special accommodations, please let me know. In fact, I think you have to let me know. But I strongly support anyone that has to go to the Paul Minton Center or anything like that. If we don't have to worry about wheelchair accessibility because we're doing all this all remotely, but if there's anything anybody needs and you have documented evidence of that you need that help, I'm asking you to make sure you reach out. If I knew I needed help back when I was an undergrad, I would have had a much easier time as an undergrad student. I am a big advocate of supporting people if they have any kind of special needs or any kind of special problems. So please, if you have like a note that you have to give me, make sure I get it to make sure you get the right accommodation, because there are some people that for some reason think like they need a quiet environment to do the exam. Technically, well, that feels like I'm cheating, and I don't want and they don't take advantage of their accommodation. If you need a quiet environment to do an exam, you need a quiet environment to do an exam. That's not cheating. It's making it a level playing field. And so please let me know. Um, Alison Jebby, by the way, is a program coordinator for undergrad advising. If you end up seeing her in her office, that's probably not a good place good place for you. She deals with discipline and academic standing issues. So go talk to her. That's fine. If you want to talk about how your program works, she's a great person to talk to. You just don't want to be forcibly invited in to talk to her about how your grades are going. Um, so while we're working on this, I'm going to be going over. We're going to be going over algorithms very, very soon. Next video. So assignment one though is coming up, and that's going to involve making a game in Scratch. I'll also have a video on how to use Scratch. Uh, but if you want more practice, there's Code Combat, there's Lightbots, there's a slew of block-like visual programming languages. They're called visual programming languages. They should be usable, immediately usable by almost anyone, and you can just play around with it. The weird thing is, people can do this for assignment one, and they get to C++, and then they forget how to do it, and you're like, it's the same thing between the two of them. Just you type one, the other one you move blocks around. Uh, if you want practice on how to program in a visual programming language, these are great resources to get you comfortable if you're feeling the least bit intimidated by this. I had at the time my 9-year-old and my 7-year-old make a video game uh, in Scratch. I'm sure pretty much all of you can do that, at least that. So have fun, play around with it. It doesn't hurt. No one gets hurt by playing around and trying out something like one of these visual programming languages. And also, while you're at it, try to install Visual Studio 2019. That might be more of a challenge. I want to make sure that you try it early so that you can ask for help before assignment 2 comes around. Okay? With that, I think that's the end of the video. We're going to be talking about Scratch soon enough. And then I think soon we're going to be talking about algorithms. And assignment 1 is coming up. That is make your own game in Scratch. And it's meant to be extremely open-ended. There's a quiz 0, which is needed for the assignment, and that is a quiz about the syllabus for the course. And then next time around, we're going to be looking at algorithmic thinking, and then we're going to look at computer architecture and data storage. So with that, I'll leave you this. You can pause the video if you want to have a read of this. Many of you will not get this joke, but I like it. XKCD to the rescue yet again. Uh, with that, I'll talk to you soon, and we'll look at algorithmic thinking. We're gonna get to the real meat of the course next. All right, thanks everyone.